Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Can you please let us know if you hear us properly, if the quality is good, audio, video? I would really appreciate your answers in the corresponding area at the chat. Thank Mark. Thanks, guys. So we will start in 2 minutes. Thanks for your feedbacks. Okay, I guess we will start right now, and I hope others will join us on the fly. So hello everyone, once again, thank you very much for joining the Technical Expert Webinar with Graham Dixon. Today we will be speaking about Wildix file system and capturing traces. Duration of our webinar is 1 hour. We will have about 45 minutes for the presentation by Graham and 10-15 minutes for the QA session. I would like to remind all of you that your microphones are muted, and if you have questions, please type them in at the corresponding area at the chat below. The video recording will be available and shared at the follow-up email within a couple of days. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'm gladly giving the floor to Graham Dixon, Technical Support Manager at Wildix UK. Graham?
Thanks, Ala. Appreciate that. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning if you're joining from the US. So today's webinar is based all around the Wildix file system and capturing traces. Some of the topics we're going to cover is how to access the file system to retrieve files, how to use media sync with WinSCP, how to start a long PCAP trace, how to analyze SIP messages, how to analyze RTP streams, and how to capture the syslog of a Wildix device. So the first thing you're going to want to do if you need to access the file system of a cloud PBX is enable SSH. And how do you do that? You need to go to my.wildix.com or WMP as you know it, go to the PBX that you want to enable SSH for, click on advanced and then click enable SSH. After enabling SSH, you will have access to the cloud PBX on port 2222. You can enable it for a short amount of time or you can enable it for a longer period of time, but just remember it's down to yourself to open it to give yourself access to it. Once you've got access to it, you can then access it through WinSCP, FileZilla, or SCP in order to get access to the files on the file system. So just to give you an example of how that looks, once you've enabled access, you can go to FileZilla, type sftp://pbxname.wildixin.com, put the admin credentials in there and port 2222. So if I show you that, if I just pop out of my keynote for a second. and open up my FileZilla here. And you can see I've connected to my PBX, wildixukcloud.wildixin.com, admin, my admin password, and port 2222. And then from the right hand side here, I have access to the file system. So I can go into, say, mount backups, and then I can go into traces, for instance, and I can see any traces that I've run in there. I can also do things like go in and see any call recordings that I have made. So if I need to get access to a call recording, I can go in through here, click the call recording, and click download, and I can take that. I can also delete it. So it gives me a lot of access to the PBX on the back end. It also gives you the ability to access it via SSH, via terminal as well. So you don't just have access to it through file structure through SFTP. You can also access it through terminal. Okay, if I go back to my keynote. Okay. So media sync with WinSCP. A lot of partners in the UK was asking about bringing down the recordings from a cloud PBX to on-premise storage. And with another partner of ours, Alan Dawson, we looked at creating a synchronization of files from the cloud to an on-premise server. We managed to do it with WinSCP. We wrote a Confluence guide on it here. To use it, use WinSCP's synchronize feature. It will copy all the files on the first run and only copy new files on the subsequent runs. It works perfectly with scheduled tasks. So for instance, every night you want that task to run. So if there's new call recordings made, you want that task to be ran and pull down the recordings. It works perfectly in that scenario. The script doesn't delete any recordings. It's designed to let the PBX do it, either with retention in WMS settings, call and chat history, or the inbuilt job when the storage fills up. The script accommodates for all system, date, and time formats. So a couple of steps that you have to go through to get this working. Create a local archive repository, C:\backups recording, or whatever you want to call it. In my instance, I've done it on C:\sync, which I'll go through in a minute. Then you want to open up WinSCP and connect to the cloud PBX. You go to toolbar, session, generate session URL code, and then you select the script and tab and copy the host key. Then you want to edit the bat file and put the correct details in the PBX host key, the location where it's going to pull the media from. So it's always going to be /media/. And then you can save it in a suitable location, e.g. C:\sync, which I'll show you in a minute. And then once you've done that and it's working correctly, you want to create a scheduled task in Windows Task Scheduler. Give it a suitable name so you understand what it's doing, and then you can trigger it to run every day or every week, whatever you want, at a suitable time. Usually in the evening is the best time because the PBX will be quiet and won't have as much traffic going through it. Okay, so an example of how that looks. So if I jump onto my server here, I've installed WinSCP, which is freeware, and you can see I have access to the PBX of the storage. If I look into media, I can see all of the recordings that I've made. I can also see details against each user that's been created on there, and other things like traces and any custom scripts that you've got on there. It's all stored in this media. What this media is going to do, what the script is going to do, is synchronize what's on here and pull it down to a local machine. So the purpose behind it is that you have a local copy of recordings that you can keep for archiving purposes. So if I go to session, generate session URL and code, I then have this. It's a script file. This contains a host key, and then underneath you can see what commands to use and then how to execute it. Incidentally as well, if we go to Google Chrome and type Wildix media sync, it's the first one that comes up. It's like I say, all of our Confluence guides and manuals are indexed by Google, so very easy to find. Again, just type in Google Wildix media sync and then you can see the host and you can see the web page directly from there. Again, at the bottom of the Confluence guide, it's got the scripts for you to download ready for you to use. Okay, so once you've gone into session and generate session URL code, you need to take this line and go back to your file that you've downloaded. I've downloaded it and extracted it. I've actually edited the synchronization on this one slightly, which I'll share with you. But there's one thing that you need to do. If I do new sync text edit, you can see in here what it's doing. Open SFTP, admin, password. This is a special character. And then what PBX it's going to open, and then the host key for it. And then after it's done that, it's going to run this command, synchronize local C sync media. So this one here that I created. And take the media stream, take the media file from the PBX. So everything that's gone on in the media file where all the recordings are stored will then be copied locally to your server. And then in the new sync.bat, I have just created a bat file which does this. It references new sync script, and what that does when I execute it, it copies everything that's in the media file and takes it down to the local file storage there. So just to give you an example of that, I'm just going to run this as administrator. This will run. Takes a little while. And then once that's completed, this is completely up to date. And you can see that this script is actually finished as well. One thing you can do as well with Task Scheduler. So if I open up Task Scheduler, Windows Task Scheduler is just an inbuilt schedule of running commands. So I've created one called Sync Media with WinSCP. If I right click over it and click Properties, I'll show you what it does. So run whether the user is logged in or not, run with the highest privileges. It's hidden task. The trigger is daily at 11:30. And what it's going to do, it's going to start the program that I just executed. So it's just going to execute this program here, which executes this script, which copies the media from the cloud PBX down to your local storage. And that's it. And then that will run every night. So every time there's new recordings made on the PBX, they will be copied locally to your storage of choice. Okay, let me go back to my keynote. So starting a long PCAP trace. So why would you want to start a long PCAP trace? There's a couple of reasons. Two that I can think of are most common. Call drops that aren't consistent. So if you're getting a call drop that is consistent every time and it's easy to replicate, then there's no need to start a long PCAP trace. We can go to the general way. We can go settings, tools, utilities, and generate trace. But if it's inconsistent, then we may need to start a long PCAP trace to work out the root cause of it. And also call quality issues. If you're having call quality issues and again it's not consistent, we may have to start a long PCAP trace to capture what's actually going on with it. So first thing you want to do is open up shell. So access terminal, option 11, SU Wildix, and then we can start a long PCAP trace. Before you do that, you're going to want to check the storage that's running on the PBX as well. So if you go into shell, option 11, SU and Wildix, type the command df, you'll get the first command that's shown on the screen, which is here. And then if you do df -h, you're going to see it in a more readable format in terms of meg and gigabyte. So calculate the storage that you're going to need. First of all, you can see in this example, I've used 2.9 gigabyte of storage. I have 7.2 gig available. On a general long PCAP trace, I'm going to use around about 1 gig. We usually do the megabyte per trace at 50 meg, and then the count to 20, so it'll do 20 concurrent traces. So this is the command that you'll probably use. No hook, TCP dump, -SO, -NI, NE. These are the ports that we're going to monitor. So we're going to monitor port 5060 for SIP traffic and the port range of 10,000 to 59,999. That means that we're going to capture audio traffic as well. Again, we're going to want to rotate that capture every 50 meg. That's what the C stands for. The uppercase W limits the amount of captures to 20 or whatever you want in there. Usually we do 20, but if it's a busy PBX, for instance, we may have to bring that count up so we can capture more files. And then lowercase w is the output, so where we're going to want to put that on the PBX. Once you've run it, you're going to want to check that the process is running. So a really good command to use is ps-aux pipe grep TCP, and that's going to give us a list of running programs on the PBX, and then we can see on there whether it's running or not. You can see in this example it's running, and the PID for it is 2906, and then the example below, I'm stopping that TCP trace by running the command kill -9 and then putting the PID. That will stop the trace from running. Another useful thing to remember as well is when you're doing a large PCAP trace and it's a ongoing TCP dump, you're going to want to use something called merge cap, because what will happen is someone will make a call and then halfway through ending of the PCAP trace at 50 meg and the start of the next one, the call will follow through with that one. So what you can use is merge cap, and what that will do is actually merge the two PCAP traces together, and then you can analyze the complete call. Otherwise you'll get if you're analyzing a VoIP call that's gone through half of a PCAP trace, then you will get an inconsistent call. It will just look like the call is active. You won't actually see the complete end-to-end flow of the call. Okay, so an example of how that looks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy my command here. I'm going to go here, 11 su Wildix, paste from browser. Okay, so now that's running. If I do psaux pipe grep TCP, then I'm going to see that that is running, and I'm going to see where it's going out to. So you can see the output here is mount, backup, traces, zip trace.pcap. If I go into, if I just make a quick call. And then I go into FileZilla, go into mount, backups, traces. I'm going to see that trace that I've just created. So I've started that long PCAP trace. I can see it. It's running from terminal. From terminal, I can see it's running. From FileZilla, I can actually see that straight away. And if I wanted to, I could just download it. Before I download it, actually, I'm going to stop the trace. So I'll do kill -9 20630. And then again, if I run the command psaux grep TCP, I can see it's stopped that command. I run it again, it's completely got rid of it. Okay, so I can go back to here, I can download this, and it's come now to my local machine. If I want to, you'll notice actually that it's not in a .pcap format, it's got 2 zeros on the end of it. To change that, just go in, get rid of the 2 zeros, and then you've got your zip trace there that you can download, open with Wireshark, and work out what's going on. So just to change the file extension, it has 2 zeros on the end. That increments with every trace that you're doing. So when we've got the count of 20, that will change from 00 to 01, 02, 03, until it gets all the way up to 20. But because it starts at 00, it will be 19. Okay. So if I go back to my keynote, and play from here. A couple of partners ask MP3 versus WAV and how long they'll get for call recordings. These are rough estimates based on what we've seen before. So MP3 is usually about 5 minutes of call recording for 1 meg, and WAV 1 minute for 1 meg. These are rough estimates. 10 gigabit is 10,000 megabytes. 10,000 megabytes, 10,000 minutes of call recordings in WAV. 10,000 megabytes is 50,000 minutes of call recordings with MP3, and then you can split that down to how many users and how many days based on the PBX. So we usually get that question, how many recordings can I hold in 10 gig? The answer is that amount, but then you've got to think about how many users are on that PBX and how many days they're working, how many calls they're making, that sort of thing. Okay, so analyzing a SIP flow. This is a basic SIP flow, so you get an invite, 100 try-in, 180 ring-in, 200 OK, acknowledgement, media, then you'll get the buy message and 200 OK. So there's a couple of things to look out for. If you don't receive the last acknowledgement after the 200 OK, after 180 ring-in, you'll usually get a call that drops out after about 30 seconds. So if you're consistently getting a call that's dropping out after 30 seconds, you'll probably notice that you're not getting that last acknowledgement and it's constantly requesting. And that could be down to a couple of things. It's usually down to port forwarding. On a cloud PBX, not really too much to worry about. If you're using a hardware PBX or a VM and you're behind a NATed firewall, then you need to make sure that you've got your port forwarding set correctly. When you see the media stream as well, you'll be able to see what codecs it's using. If there's other invites in there that changes the codecs, for instance, it starts on G711 and then changes to T38 halfway through, you'll be able to see that within the media stream. You'll also be able to see things like DTMF options. So when people have pressed a DTMF option and they're on a call, you'll be able to see that within the media stream as well if it's on SIP info. Okay, so some SIP responses. So when you see 100, there are informational messages. So 100 trying, 180 ringing, 183 session in progress. 200 messages, they are okay in acceptance, they're success messages. 300, they are redirectional messages. 400, client errors, so things like 404 not found. You probably see that a few times if you've configured the dial plan incorrectly. Server errors, 500, and then global errors are 600. So these are some of the typical SIP responses that you'll get. So how to analyze a SIP flow in Wireshark. So the first thing you're going to want to do is open up the PCAP within Wireshark, and then you want to go to telephony and VoIP calls. Select the VoIP call that you want and click on flow sequence. And you can see in this instance here, there's an invite, 407 proxy authentication required, acknowledgement. Second invite again, 100 try 180 ring 'em, 200 OK, and then you get the acknowledgement. Again, that acknowledgement is very important. The RTP traffic, I can see that's in G711, and that's backwards and forwards, so it looks fine. And then I can see the buy message and 200 OK. When you're analyzing things like call drops as well, the direction of the buy message is important because we can see whether the PBX sent the buy message or whether the carrier sent the buy message. So it gives us an indication to start off with which direction the call drop was initiated from. So the direction of the buy message is also important. Okay, so an example of that in Wireshark. I'm just going to come out of my keynote for a second. And if I don't find that, let's look at this one. And then I go telephony and VoIP calls. I click on this VoIP call and flow sequence. I can see what's gone on with this call. I can see these are information messages. If I look at this flow sequence, I'll be able to see a little bit more detail. So invite 100 try 183 session in progress with SDP, and then I've got an RTP stream, acknowledgement, and then I can see on here when people are pressing DTMF options 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can also see what codec it's using, and then again I can see which direction the buy message came from. So in this case, 172.18.0.2 initiated the buy message, and the acknowledgement came from 172.18.0.1. Okay. I'll close this. Go back to my keynote. So analyzing RTP streams in Wireshark as well. So Wireshark has the ability to listen to an RTP stream and also analyze what's happening with it. You can see in this instance here that there is a lot of lost packets. There's a max, the max jitter is quite high and the max delta is really high. So that would indicate to me that the call quality is going to be pretty bad. I can also see the direction of the lost packets as well. So I can see that it's coming from 52.209.61.129 to the internal address. And how does that look on a Wireshark and sound? So if I go here, call quality. I go telephony and RTP streams. I can see this here. If I click on Analyse, I have the ability to play this stream. If I play this. And there you go. You can hear really broken audio. So you have the ability to listen to the audio stream straight from Wireshark as well, as long as you're capturing the traffic with that trace, including the RTP stream, so 10,000 to 59,999, you should be fine. You should be able to listen to that traffic. Okay. So I'll go back to my keynote now. Capturing the syslog of a device, of a Wildix device. So to enable it, go to WMS, device, edit, and then click on Syslog server. That will then click save, then go back to the device and click on configure sync. That will push that syslog to the device and tell the device to send all of its syslog back to the PBX, where we can then capture it. Some useful commands to check that that is running. You can use an ngrep command. This one is useful. Monitor on port 514. Then we can, there's a Confluence guide here as well on how to capture a syslog from a Wildix device. If, again, the issue is inconsistent and we think it might be device related, then we might run this type of command, and this will consistently run the command again, 50 meg, and rotate every 20. So once it reaches 20, it will create a new PCAP trace. So it's very similar to creating a long TCP dump on 5060, but we're capturing it on a different port. Once we've done that, we can then change that PCAP into a readable format, so a log format. So here, this is the command to run from shell, and that will convert that PCAP into a text file that we can then analyze to see what's going on. Okay, so an example of this, if I copy this. If I paste this command here, just to show you actually on the PBX, I provisioned my 480G. If I click on edit, I can see that I've enabled Syslog server, so the device is sending all the Syslog back to the PBX. To ensure that that's working, I'm just going to paste this, and then I'll do something like, here we go, as I'm dialing, you can see that it's sending all of the data back to the PBX. And then when I hang up, I can see what's going on with it. And again, I can capture that in a PCAP format and then change the PCAP format to a log file, where then I can analyze that data. Okay, so if I go back to my keynote now. And that's it for the presentation. So if there's any questions you'd like to ask, then feel free to ask away.
Thank you very much, Graham. I believe we do have a couple of questions. Let me help you with that.
Okay.
So we have a question. For the WinSCP syncing of the media, we have to give the customer's admin that will be setting this up the WMS admin password, or can we set up another user password for this?
It's possible. I haven't tested with another user password. You'd have to give yourself permissions to the file system. But yeah, I personally, it's used. Well, it depends how you want to give it to if you want to give it to the customer or not, or you want to set it up for the customer and say this is how to retrieve it. So yeah, at the moment I've tested it with admin credentials. It could be possible with other credentials. You'd have to just make sure that the user has the correct privileges to access the media file.
Thank you. Another question, will we email the keynote presentation? Yes, I guess we can share it, right, Graham?
Yep. No worries, and I'll give I'll put all the commands as well on a file, and we can also share the new script that I've worked on for the Windows server. So yeah, I can share that, no problem.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I don't have any other questions, but thank you. Okay. Then it looks like we are done with the webinar, and no one has any other questions. Then thank you very much, Graham. Thank you everyone for joining our webinar. We will announce shortly new dates of the webinars and new topics. Please follow us across all social media platforms. We will announce everything. And as I have shared at the very beginning, we will share the video recording of this webinar shortly. Please give me one day. So thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Thanks, Graham.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.